Hey, bulk publishers. Ariel here, arielphoenix.com, bulkpublishing.ai. Today I'm introducing the new bulk publishing automated spreadsheet. So this is a completely separate spreadsheet to the bulk publishing system, the standard spreadsheet that we've been using. Of course, we've been presented with quite a few issues with errors when the script times out and it's trying to generate the first draft, which is the main reason for this new sheet. So you can still use the bulk publishing system for a bunch of other stuff when you want to generate tweets and all of that other short form stuff. You can use it as you would with the formulas and whatnot, but this is completely separate, and this is just a way to create first drafts. So some things you will notice that are quite different to the other sheet are we have multiple sections or cells for API keys, and this does allow you to use different keys for different things if you need to. I'm actually not sure if that does anything. So I have a different API key for first drafts. I don't know if it doesn't matter and if the multiple API keys are just there so you know what key you're using in what application. So I'm not actually sure if it does anything, but that's the way the sheet is set up. So the next thing you've got is, of course, the model. And if you have access to GPT-4, lucky you. It's very, very good. Definitely better than 3.5. But you might find that you don't need to use it in everything. So we only have the option for Turbo and GPT-4. So you can set them all to Turbo. Just be sure to change your characters. Of course, GPT-4 does allow a lot more characters or tokens. So we up that all the way to 4,000. But if you are using Turbo, you need to bring that back down to 2,000, at least for your first draft, so it can do as much, it can generate as much as possible when you generate your first drafts. And then, of course, you've got temperature settings. This is no different to using the playground or any other tool that allows you to put your API key in. Frequency penalty, presence penalty, and then we have the prompts here. So it may look like you can add your own here, but you can't. It's all coded into the script, which I'm going to show you in a moment. But the prompts here, these are all, again, coded into the automation. But what you can do is mess with these. I 100% recommend changing these up, especially for the introduction and the meta description. It's going to generate very, very similar sounding meta descriptions and introductions unless you go in and you kind of mess with these prompts. So change these up as much as you like. If you find that you don't want the first draft to be written in HTML, then absolutely tell it to write it in Markdown, and then it will put the hashes and blah, blah, blah. Good stuff. So let's go on to the actual sheet itself. And I now need to delete these values so I can do them again. Delete all of this. And these are the keywords I'm going to be generating for. I just went into Google search and typed in tips for buying a house and grabbed the first 10 from AutoSuggest, which is a very, very lazy keyword research method, but I love it. And if you have keywords everywhere installed on Chrome, it's going to show you the search volume, which is awesome. The automation's currently on, so I'm going to stop it because it's going to keep generating before I've actually showed you what it's supposed to do. But that's good. We know everything is working. And so we've got the prompt data cell first. And the prompt data cell, again, if you are part of the Topical Authority Accelerator course, you will be familiar with prompt data cells. This is just where you concatenate and group all of the information that you want to feed to the first draft, or any other field. If you want to take all the information that you want in the blog and then you want to tell it to write a TLDR or come up with some FAQs, you would still use the prompt data cell because it's structured all the data that you need. So the keyword, of course, in B2, then you've got the blog post title, which will populate once we've started generating, and then it's going to have additional keywords, which could be auto-generated or they could be data-driven, which of course is better if you have used a tool like Through or Alton's tool, which is called Curator. I'll have to do a review on that tool at some point, or Keyword Cupid, I think it is. There are quite a few keyword grouping tools. I've actually made a video on some free ones as well. So if you are using a keyword grouping tool and you have secondary keywords or related keywords that you've got the search volume for, then you would just copy and paste those into the keyword, the additional keywords column. But if you just want some similar keywords, some related keywords to keep your blog post on topic, or maybe cover areas of the post that you hadn't considered and you want to guide the AI a bit more, you can always use AI to generate some related keywords or semantically related keywords. Whatever you put in the prompt, it's going to do. So I tend to use GPT 3.5 on that. It's not an intensive task, so you can use GPT 3.5. And I've not seen much difference between 3.5 and GPT-4 when it comes to generating related keywords. And the next thing is the blog post outline, which again will be generated using the auto or the manual, will just be generated with AI. And then the research data, which is my favorite field because it allows you to put all your facts in. And of course, with the prompt data cell, AI, the first draft, is going to consider all of that data when it creates your first draft. So if you've given it the facts or any specific information you wanted to mention, maybe you're doing a top 10 of something and you want to include your product in that top 10, the AI may not have that information, so you could put that in your research data and say, this is the best bulk publishing AI tool on the market, and it's going to put that in the post. So the concatenate and the prompt data cell offer opportunities to keep things on track and guide your automation or your AI generated content as much as possible. But of course, these are just to create first drafts. So I know a lot of people want to use this to just create a bunch of blog posts and upload them. But I will say, especially if you're using HTML, if you're telling it to format in HTML, one issue I've noticed is that sometimes it doesn't complete the HTML tags, and that creates a mess. So if you uploaded all the content as is without checking over it, there may be some inconsistencies or some incomplete drafts. It's not completely perfect. All right, so then as you would paste your keywords into the keyword field. And this is a very important field because if you pasted 1,000 keywords in this row, this column, once you hit automate, well, first it's going to generate all the slugs because that's a simple formula, a simple Google Sheet formula. Category is for when you are uploading on WP All Import. You don't need to use it. It's not active. These cells are not active or related to AI in any way, but the yellow cells are quite important. And then, of course, the prompt data cell is required to create the first draft. So those are color coded. But the additional keywords, if you go to manual or auto, you will see the cells that you can generate. So titles, keywords, outline, introduction, meta description, and first draft. And if you hit manual, it's going to start to generate titles for the keywords you have on the list. And that's if you have some in front of you and you want to do it right away. But what you need to consider is when you hit manual, it's going to generate them all in one go. So it is a bit slower than when we would generate one and then click and drag and let it load. It's not going to show you it's loading, but in the back end, the script is running and there you go. It's generated all 10 titles. And again, if you wanted to do that manual for introduction, you would do the same. But bear in mind, the introduction is more tokens than the title and it is doing them all at once. So that will be a lot slower than the click and drag that we were doing before. The good thing is, instead of getting errors because it times out, because it's trying to do them all at once, even if it does have an internal error, it's not going to show you. It's just going to keep trying until it's able to deliver. So that's a good thing, and that's going to happen with all of these. We don't have those errors anymore, and that's manual. So this is going to apply to all of these. I'm going to delete this now and explain the auto custom menu, which again is the same, but it's not going to generate them all at once. So you don't need to worry about putting 1,000 keywords in the sheet and then hitting auto custom and it being overloaded because it's trying to generate them all at once. It's going to do them one by one, but it's going to run every 5 minutes. So it's going to just continuously try to fill the sheet. And again, if you have 1,000 keywords on the list, you can kind of set it and forget it, because you can hit auto generate all. And once the script is running, it's going to, again, fill in the additional keywords, the titles, the introduction, the meta description, outline. Once those are all filled in, it's going to start trying to fill in the first draft, because it needs them. It needs these to be populated from the prompt data cell. So again, this does take a bit longer to get started because it's running. The automation is set up to continuously run, but you're not going to come back and have any errors. So if you left this running and you started this in the morning and ran the script and then went off, you're going to come back and your sheet should be full. And that takes out a lot of coming back and you've got errors all over your sheet, or click and drag and it's timing out and you've got to stop and wait the 60 seconds and do it again. Sometimes the outline will fail doing it automated, but all we have to do in those cases are we can just tell it to do the outline on its own and it will do that just fine. So as you can see in the back end, everything is timed. So I've told it to generate outline only because the outline failed. For some reason, it's failed. It's failed when I tried to do it a few times, but on my other sheet, it didn't. So I'm not sure what that's linked to. But then when you click generate outline only, it won't have any issues with that, and it's going to start to generate those outlines. So in a few moments, you're going to notice it started filling in additional keywords, titles, introductions, meta description, and then the outline. But when you come over to the app script and go to executions, you can see everything happening in the background and it's telling you how long it's taken to generate those. So generate outline is still trying to run, but generate outline only is going to be fine. So the automation is running in the background and we are going to start seeing this sheet, this section populate. And just to go over here to explain a bit about this. So when it comes to using WP All Import, something that I found useful is to be able to throw some internal links in. And I've discussed this before. It's not the best method of internal linking, but if you are going for topical dominance and everything is related, so of course these are not your typical related articles, because if you're buying a house in London, you're not very interested in tips for buying a house in Florida. But of course, depending on the keyword and the type of article it is, maybe you were talking about different hair growth supplements then, and you're talking about very specific brands, or this one versus that one, those articles would be related. And I tend to upload my content in those kind of clusters where they are related enough to use this internal linking method. So I hope that's not confused anybody, but what I would do if the topics are related is I would put the site in the site column. As you can see, if you click and drag, it's going to generate the URL for that page. So the anchor text is automatically taken from the keyword because we'd want the keyword to be the anchor text. You can add another column for proper, the proper formula that's going to capitalize these if it looks better, but I don't really care about that. So I would use the keyword as the anchor text. It's got my site, and then this concatenates to the URL because it's got the slug. Where? Oh, okay. Yeah, so it's grabbed the slug from D2 and we've created the URL. Providing your permalinks are set up in a very, very basic way, so your blog posts are immediately after your URL, then these are going to be active links that work. So once the HTML is on your page, you'll be able to visit these pages once they exist. Of course, you do need to double check your permalink, your URL structure to ensure that is the case, because if you've got site.com/blog, then you'd need to, of course, adjust this field to accommodate that. So as you can see, it's updated the URL, and then the ahref is going to be updated as well. So I'm going to change that back. So we've got the ahref, which is what's going to be the clickable link, which comes up wherever this is pasted. Unfortunately, my screen stopped recording in true Descript fashion. Such an amazing tool, but such a buggy tool. Gosh, I need to find an alternative, or they just need to get it together. I think it died when I was explaining this, and now I don't really feel like explaining it, but we have, okay. We've got the URL, anchor text, full URL, again, providing you have a basic permalink structure. I mentioned, before I realized it wasn't recording anymore, that if your permalink structure is something like blog, then you need to add that, and then it's going to automatically update your URL for that page and the ahref and everything else, because everything is just taking the data from these cells. But yeah, so at the moment it's generating the first draft. Again, it cut out when it was populating the additional keywords, titles, introduction, meta description, and outline. But now that all of those fields are complete, it's running the first draft script, and it's going to keep updating. So when there are errors, you wouldn't know, because it's just going to keep going. It's going to keep running and updating. I think that's all I really need to explain. Something I did mention that I no-cut before I realized is that depending on how many entries you have on your list, because they all link to each other, this one's going to link to the next one, and then the next one, the next one, the next one. So this is going to link to 4 different posts, so the next 4 on the list. And the second one is going to do the same thing, but it's going to link to the next ones down, so the next 4, and so on. So eventually, when you get to the bottom one, I've done it now, but it would then go on to the next one, and that's blank. So of course, if you've got 10 on your list, you're going to want to go in and update it to the top one, so number 1, because otherwise nothing would be linking to number 1 because they all go on to the consecutive 4. And then you're going to do the same for this one. It's going to start at number 1 and then 2 or 2, 3, and then the same. So it kind of staircases up. It may seem like that's something that's going to take forever to do if you've got 1,000 posts, but no, that's not the case because the formula is already there. So if you have 1,000 on the list, it's going to automatically create your URLs, your Ahrefs, and then the internal links. As you can see, the formula is already sitting there to go on to the next one. So if you had 1,000 on the list, let's pretend that this is 1,000. As you can see, it runs out. Let's pretend this is 1,000. It would still be, you'd still have the exact same staircase of 4. So this would start again at number 1, then you'd have 1 and 2, then you'd have 1, 2, 3, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you could just continue to click and drag, and if you wanted to add more to your list of 1,000. So it's the exact same amount of effort it takes to change the formula back to 1, 2, 3, 4. So you have an equal amount of links in each post. So everything gets a link. And then what you would do in WP All Import, because you've got your anchor text set, all you would do is, if you'd write something like, if you're interested in this topic, then you might want to check out our post on this, that, and that. And you can try to do a generic contextual paragraph. I've done that many times. Sometimes it is a bit forced, but who cares? Or you could just do bullet points. Either is fine as long as they are related and they are, it's topically relevant. And I mentioned before that this particular example, you wouldn't be linking to these other ones. You probably wouldn't link buying a house in London to buying a house in Canada because nobody cares. But you might tips for buying a house in, I guess, 2023. Tips for buying a house in today's market. Those would be relevant and related, and you could factor those in so they link to each other. So when I do it, I tend to do very, very clear. I'm going for topical dominance, so I'm zeroing in on every topic in my niche. So there's always going to be plenty of opportunity to link relevant articles together, providing I bulk publish them at the same time, because I don't have to surgically go in and try to make them work. I can just loosely link them to each other and it's all going to be relevant. So again, this method is perfect for set it and forget it. Anybody who just wants to generate a bunch of first drafts. But again, these are first drafts. I know many people are just going to generate and go. That's not how I do it. And actually, I prefer to use the bulk publishing WordPress plugin because of the updates that I've made on that. And you get to tailor the content to what you want a lot more. It offers much more flexibility than the spreadsheet does. And that wasn't the case initially. But with the spreadsheet and the spreadsheet method, regardless of how many columns of content you generate, you have to piece them together in a template when you use WP All Import. And those templates are very important because that allows you to reduce your formatting and your editing time, because you've got the structure already and you can throw in H2s and everything. You can really make some very, very quality templates if you take the time to do it. But yeah, so we're going to look into some of these, and I'm going to give you a warning now that when you use a prompt to tell it to include HTML, sometimes it does get lost. Sometimes it does get lost, and that's why I would never upload this well, I have done. I'm not going to sit here and say I'd never, but I prefer not to just upload first drafts from the sheet as they are. they definitely need somebody going in and cleaning them up, but that's why I call them first drafts. So let's click into this first draft cell and see what it's done. So we've got a H2, and this understanding heading with AI is usually just an introduction masked as a heading, but it seems to have done the job. And let's see, H2 number 2. It's got some of these dashes, which should be bullet points. And these look like subheadings or just bolded. And as you can see, everything's going well with the headings and the HTML. But then you get to this one, and you can see it starts to lose. So you can't just go uploading this stuff without checking over it. And then it's just started doubling down on the H squared. So we wouldn't do that. But as you can see, it's doing what it's supposed to do for the most part, and we have a whole blog post, which was the main issue with the bulk publishing system, was the errors that you'd get when you try to generate a first draft because the API times out. Google Sheets was not happy with the time it took to grab this data, but because the script is running, even if we did have an error, it would just keep going. So this is why it's best to set it and forget it. You're not going to do this and wait for it to be done. You're going to do this and get on with another task. But yeah, just going back into it, you can see why you'd want to do like a find and replace. If you notice continuous issues, like usually I see like the HTML is like spaced out like this. I don't know if that presents an issue, if white space is a problem, but I would take these once I've generated all of my first drafts, and I would go to find and replace, and I would replace them with the correct H2, H2, H3, H3. And again, what's this? So this is not a complete post. So I would delete this, and the automation is running. So you can safely delete ones you're not happy with and know it's going to try and fill this in again because the keywords are here. So as long as there are keywords in this field, every row is going to be populated. And if you delete something, it's just going to go back and do it again. Let's check the third one. Yeah. See, it's thrown something back in. Is it the same thing? It's thrown the same one back in there. Delete that again. I may need to just run it once it's run all the others, go back, stop the script, and then hit manual or auto and get it to run over all the ones I didn't like. But as you can see, it's creating the posts. They are long form, and we're not getting the errors, which was the main reason for issues, which is the main problem in the sheet. But that's it. I hope I have thoroughly gone over the workings of the bulk publishing automated sheet. Of course, if you have any questions, if you're in the course, just drop me an email. I'm doing a bit better these days with response because I'm feeling a lot better. I was very ill. So yeah, if you have any questions, drop them below, and I'm going to do a video demonstrating the updates and the changes in the bulk publishing AI WordPress plugin, which is my tool of choice at the moment. But for everybody who prefers the sheet and is still using it to do their social media posts and all the other wonderful combinations of programmatic SEO and AI, hopefully this is just an addition. Maybe you don't need it, but I know a lot of people did. So yeah, that's it, guys. Peace.